Welcome to another video from Indzara.com. In today's video, I will be walking through step-by-step tutorial how to calculate a stock screener that you see on screen for using a simple moving average indicator. And this screener will be dynamic. So for example, if I want to look at a simple moving average for a period of 50 days instead of 20. Now you can see that it automatically updates the data and it pulls data from the Microsoft service. So you would need a Microsoft 365 subscription in order to pull the live market data, and the market is actually open right now. You can refresh this data whenever you want by going into the data refresh all, and that will keep updating your stocks data from the stock market. And also you will be able to look at only buy or sell signals based on the simple moving average, and it's very interactive and dynamic, and you can add more stocks to your watch list to be able to keep track of this stocks based on the simple moving average. So I'm going to walk you through step by step on how to build this from a blank workbook. And it's been a while since I did something like this from scratch, and so it's going to be fun. And I'll also be publishing soon a template based on this, where you can just download the template and use it if you prefer to do so instead of building it yourself. In this video, I'm going to walk you through step by step how to build it. And I'm going to do this in 4 steps. The first step, we will first figure out what is the starting and the ending date of the stock history that we want to pull in order to calculate our moving average. So first is to identify the start and end date. Once we do that, then we go and say, okay, for all the stocks in my watch list, go and pull the stock history according to the start and end date. Pull me all the stock history for all the stocks that I have in my watch list. And in the third step, we will actually calculate the simple moving average for each stock using a formula. And once we are done with that, the rest of that in the fourth step is to just build this table out, add extra columns of information, add interactive slicers, and then also add these counters, which will count the number of stocks, and also make this dynamic by not only using a fixed period for the simple moving average, make it dynamic. So I can just type it in another simple moving average length, and now it automatically updated from the Microsoft service. So that's what we're going to build. So let's get started. So we will start with the blank workbook. So first, what I want to do is to use a sample stock just for us to start with. So I'm going to type in XNAS, which stands for the NASDAQ stock exchange, colon, and then the ticker symbol MSFT. I'm going to hit enter. Nothing happens, and that's because Excel doesn't really yet know that this should be treated as a stocks data type. So if I go to the data ribbon and I click on stocks, now it will convert into a specific stocks data type. Now, the benefit of this is that we can now get a lot of information about the stock, and you can see here when I clicked on it, there is a lot of attributes that we can pull for the specific stock, including live price from the market. And this requires Microsoft 365 subscription. So if you already have a Microsoft 365 subscription, which includes Excel, Word, PowerPoint, Teams, Outlook, OneDrive, and all that, if you already have that, then you don't need anything more. But if you don't have any Microsoft 365 plan, then I would suggest you should get one in order to get the live stock market data. Okay, so now what we are trying to do is to calculate a simple moving average for Microsoft's prices over the last 20 periods or 20 days. So I'm going to just write it down. What is my simple moving average SMA period or length that we are trying to do this calculation for? We'll do it for 20. Okay, so 20 days is what we are trying to do. So if you just think about it, what is the moving average for a 20-day period? Just to explain very quickly, it's a very straightforward concept, but it's important that we just touch on it. So let's say there are 20 values, and I'm just using 1 to 20 here. But if you think about, if these are the prices of the Microsoft stock in the last 20 days, if I actually do an average of this, and I can show you at the bottom here that the average is 10.5, That is the simple moving average. This is what we are trying to calculate. But instead of doing it on 1 to 20, we want to do it on actual stock market data, closing prices for the last 20 days. Now, let's go and try to see how we can pull the stock market price data for Microsoft for the last 20 days. So there is a function called stock history, and the stock history function allows us to pull historical data from the market on the stock prices. So for example, I will provide the input here. First one is a stock. So I'm going to click on cell C2, which is the cell where we have the stock symbol converted into a stock's data type cell. So it's important that you have that converted, and then you do a comma and it asks for start date. So we want to do for the last 20 days. We want to do a stock history pull for the last 20 days. It asks for a date. It doesn't ask for how many days you need. It asks for a specific start date and a specific end date. So it makes it a little tricky. So let's just go with that and say, if today is today, today minus 19 will give us 20 days. Okay, so I'm going to just type in today minus 19. So if I go back 19 days from today, that is my start date, and the end date, let's say it's today. Okay. Now, the next parameter we need to provide is, do you want daily price information or weekly price information? So we need daily. Do we need to show a header? And this, I like it for the explanation of this purpose. We can have it as a header, but we can also say no header if you don't need the header, if you're very familiar with this stocks data. So for now, I'm just going to keep the header 1 and then comma, and then we will do a stock attribute, the price attribute. Do you want the date and then the close? So in my case, I would prefer the date column. So I'm just going to choose 0. The good thing is you can choose many attributes, properties as they call it. So I'm going to do a comma, and then now I will choose the closing price, or I will mark 1. So then I don't need any more values. I don't need to know the high, low, volume, and all that stuff for our purpose here. So I'm just going to close the parenthesis and hit enter. There we go. So it automatically pulls the data, and we have the date and then the closing price for Microsoft. But it is not all that good, because if I look at the number of rows here, you'll see that we have only 13 rows in this. So that's not good enough, because we want 20, and we actually did today minus 19 in our formula. So why didn't we not get any 20 rows? And that's because there are holidays and weekends in between, which are not trading days. So we won't get any data for that. And so that's why we don't have, for example, we don't have March 19th and 20th. And then we won't have any data for 26th and 27th. That's okay. The point is, this means that we need to pull data in a slightly different way. This is the first challenge that we encounter, which is how do we overcome the holidays and weekends missing data? Now, we could do, a lot more sophisticated things, but I just use the brute force method here by hard coding and say, instead of just pulling 19, why don't we go 10 more days and pull 29? And all I did was to change this formula, right? And I made the change to 29 instead of 19. And now I have a lot more rows of data. And if I, select all of them, and you can look at the bottom here, count 21 rows. So now we have 21 rows of data. So this is good. And if you want to be even safer, you could even do, okay, let me just do 39. And now I will get 27 rows of price information. That should be enough for us to calculate a 20 period simple moving average. So now that we have kind of figured out a brute force method to overcome the missing holidays and weekends, now let's see what are the different cells that we need to average. So as I said, the last 20 rows. So if I click on this cell, row number 31, from here, I need to come back all the way until March 8th. This is the 20 period or 20-day price history. That's what I need to average. But the trick is that today, the last row may be in row 31. Tomorrow, as the history is changing, it could change. depending on how many holidays and weekends are there in our period that we are pulling the data for, it may vary. So we can't always say that the row 31 is the last row. So first, let's kind of find out and calculate certain things which will help us get and overcome this issue. So first I will do is a maximum history date. And this is straightforward. So I'm going to just do a max of all these date values. Again, remember that this is a dynamic array. It won't always stop with row 31. So we want our formula to also be able to accommodate that dynamic nature of the array. The stock history function that we used is a dynamic array. So basically, as you saw, when I changed the number from 29 to 39, it automatically expanded the number of rows, right? So in order to accommodate that, we can do an index function. The index function is going to just go and refer to that array and which is the array. And I'm going to click on this date um, value. And the reason I'm doing that is because that is where we wrote the stock history formula. So wherever you wrote the stock history function based formula, select that one and then do a hash. And you saw that as soon as I did a hash, it detected an array automatically. And this is how we can refer, similar to how we would refer a table with a table name. Here we don't have a name. We can just refer it to the cell with a hash. That works. So now I've done that. We have I'm referring to that array. I don't need to look at only one row. I want to look at all the rows for the date column. So I'm going to do a comma so you can skip the row number parameter. Go to the column number, and the column number is 1 because the first column has the date information for me. Close parenthesis. So all I'm doing now is like, hey, look at all the dates, find a maximum of that, and I'm going to close it. So now I'm hitting enter, and now it pulls me back a number and not a date. So that's okay. We can always convert that into a date. And I also like, just because, we have viewers internationally as well. So sometimes the month and the date could be confusing. So I like to change it to DD MMM And so this is more clear that it's 4th April. Okay, no, that's right. So 4th April is the last day that we have. Let's just find the row number, right? So the row number, the last date is 4th April, but what is the row number? There are many ways to do this. But one thing I will do is, okay, let's call it final row. The final row would be the if I look at it as the number of rows in the array, so I can do a rows function, open parenthesis, and it says, what's your array? And here I can just do the refer back to the array, the stock history function formula cell, and then I do an hash, and just like we did in the previous calculation, if I just do this, it'll give me the number of rows. The one thing you have to keep in mind is that because we asked for the header here, this rows function will actually include that as well. And so my suggestion would be here for us to know exactly how many rows are in this table. Without the header, let's just subtract the header, -1, and now we have 27. Okay, what does this 27 mean? So if I start from here, row number 5, and go all the way, this is 27 rows. So 27th row in this table without the header is my final row. And if, for example, if I change this from 39 to 35, and you'll see that the final row changed, right? So because, as I said, it's dynamic and our formula will also automatically find it. Great. Now the trick is we need to now find the starting row, right? So let's just stick with this example here. So this is our final row. I'm just marking this for, as you are looking at this, it's easy to visualize what we're trying to do here. So that's the final row. And what is the starting row? And this is the starting row. So from here all the way here, 20 rows are there, 20 values. That is what we want. And so the final row is 25. That's great. But what is the starting row? So the starting row typically would be the final row minus 19 because we have 20. So we'll go back 19 rows and it'll say start from the 6th row. And you can see one, it starts from here. The sixth row is this. Okay, to make it easy to for you to see, I'm just going to also pull in the date. What is the first date? Index of, again, we'll go back to this, comma, pull me the this row number, and remember that now we need to account for that header. So +1 is the header, comma, column number is, because we are pulling the date column, it's the first column, so I'll do 1, close parenthesis. Okay, so now you can see that it pulls the 8th March, which is exactly what we want, right? So now we are able to find where we need to start and where we need to end, which was the objective of the first part of our tutorial, is to find the starting and the ending dates for history. It looks like we got it, but there is one more issue or hurdle. Today is April 5th, which is a Tuesday, and the market is actually open right now. But you'll see that the history only goes until March 4th. But for us to actually calculate a simple moving average of the last 20 periods, we actually have to include today or April 5th. But it's not even in the stock history function. And that's because the stock history function only pulls in the data of completed close days of stock history. So it doesn't include today. So now for us to accurately calculate the simple moving average, we need to now figure that part in. So that is the other challenge that we have. So the way we're going to do this is, first, let's find out the last traded time. So there is an easy way to do it. We can just say equals and click on your stock symbol and then the dot. And then you can say, what is the last trade time? Okay. You can also type that in, but either way, I like to round this down because this will allow us to say, give me a date instead of a date and time. So now basically it says it's 4/5/2022. And once again, let me just do BD and then M. Okay, 5th April 2022. So the last trade data available live from the market is 5th April, which is today. But the stock history maximum history date is 4th April. So now we need to account for this difference here. And so I like to name this called trading day flag or an indicator. And this one should say if the last traded date equals the maximum history date. That means um, the history is complete and today is not an active trading day, then it would say, no, it's not an active trading day today. Otherwise, I would say, yes, it is. Okay. So now this will indicate that we have a trading day. I like to name these cells so just so that it'll be easy for us to as we move forward. So for the trading day flag, let's just call it trading underscore day as the name. And if you're not familiar, you can name any cell by just clicking on here, and then in this box you can actually write the name. So for example, if I want to name this max history date as the you know, I like to call end date or something like that, and I type that in. And the start date, if I want to name it as START_DT for date, and I hit enter. So you have to hit enter, only then it registers. And now when you go over to the other cell, you can see that it says end_DT. This is start_DT. And this is, we didn't name that one, but this one is a trading_day. So now we have these things factored in, but how are we going to account for this trading day situation in our moving average calculation? So if we go back to our original example, we said we want to pull the last 20 days of history, okay? But now what has happened is the 20th day is live market activities happening. So we need to pull this from the live market data, which is not available in the stock history, but all the previous 19 we can actually pull in from the stock history function. This is the approach that we will be taking. So if today is a trading day, or if the trading day flag equals yes, then pull only 19 days of history. So if trading day equals yes, then we want to do it this way. But if trading day equals no, what do we do? So if trading day equals no, then I want the stock history to be used fully. So we don't need to pull the live market data. So now you understand the nuance and the fact that we have to account for this way. Now we can change the starting row instead of pulling from the from here. So start row when trading day equals no. Okay, so let me make it clear so you can see fully what's going on. Okay, so this is the start row when the trading day equals no. This one should be the start row when trading day equals yes. And the reason here is if I look at all the prices from here, we will have 19 days. So as I was explaining here, if the trading day equals yes, then we only need 19 days from the stock history. So in realistically speaking, we are actually adding another one called 4/5, right? So if I add April 5th at the bottom, then if I go from here, sorry, so if I go from here all the way until this point, and if you add them, you will get, because this is a blank, the count doesn't work. And you can see here that we have selected 20 rows. So 20 rows meaning 20 values. So if the trading day equals yes, we need to change the start row formula. So a simple way to do this would be instead of 19, I would say if trading day equals yes, then go back only 18, otherwise go 19 cells back. Okay, so I can close this one. And if you're not familiar, so because we named the cell trading underscore day, now we can use that everywhere, just calling it trading underscore day, which makes the formulas a little bit easier to read. Okay. Now, what we have done now is to account for the fact that if it is a trading day, then the start date will be March 9th. And that is exactly what we wanted. And when the next weekend comes along or the holiday comes along, if it is not a trading day, and it will automatically go over here. So this is um, again, this is dynamic. If we have more holidays in between or weekends or in between, obviously our formula will automatically recognize that and will update. So now we have what we have done here is to find out a start date and end date, which is dynamic, and it takes into account the missing weekends and holidays data. Also, it accounts for the fact that if it is a live trading day, we will still be able to pull in only the necessary stock history from the stock history function. So we have done that part. The hard work is kind of done. So now we move on to the more fun stuff about creating the stock screener. Now, the second step is to pull the stock history data for a list of stocks that we are interested in our watch list. So in order to do so, first I'm just going to name this sheet as the help sheet, because basically you don't need this sheet after you finish developing. You can hide this sheet, but we need to add a new sheet. I'm going to call it the screener sheet, because this is where we're going to build the screener. Now, the first thing is we need a bunch of stocks for us to start with as a watch list. And so I have in my other screen that you may not be able to see, but I have a bunch of stocks, and I'm just going to copy and then paste them over here as values. Paste as values, and you will see that it automatically detects it as a stock symbol. So in your case, if you haven't done so, if you've just typed in the values, just select and go back and do the stocks. So it converts it into a stocks data type. And again, you can use any of the stocks that you may be interested in. I'm just going to type stock as a header. I'm going to select these values and Control T, and this will convert it into a table. Okay, so now we have a table, and I like to add another column which has like a row, is like a row number, right? So I'm going to call it stock number. And the way I typically do is I use the row function to identify the row number of the current row, and then minus row number of the header. So here in this table, the header is this. So I'm going to just click on that cell and you'll see that the formula, it automatically says row of table one headers underscore, comma, stock number. And I'm going to close parenthesis that and hit enter. Automatically now it'll be 1, 2, 3 to 10. And as we, if you expand the table, it'll automatically create a row number for us or a serial number for us. I like to name the tables typically. So I'm going to just call this T underscore screener. And just like the name ranges of the cells, the table naming, again, you can go when you're inside a table, in the table design ribbon, you'll have a table name that you can enter. And so I like to do that. Now, typically we want the stock number to probably be on the left. So I'm just going to move it. And if you like to keep it there, that's not a problem. You can keep it where you prefer. Okay, so now we have a bunch of stocks which are in my watch list essentially. And now I want to be able to pull in the stock history for these 10 stocks, just like how we were pulling it for this stock, right? And now I don't think we need this logic anymore. So I'm just going to delete this. We don't need that anymore. Now let's talk a little bit about what's the way to pull in all that history for all the 10 stocks. So I'm going to just use the hard-coded method of just numbering 1, 2, 3, and I'll just do this. I'm sure that we can do it in formulas, but I'm just going to do it as hard-coded values for 10. Now, the next thing is I'm going to write a formula to pull in the stock symbol. So stock and comma, which row am I pulling in from? I'm going to choose this cell J1, which is like 1, 2, 3 to 10. And so if I select that and close parenthesis, and now you see that it pulls in that first stock that we have in our watch list. Nice. I like wrapping up with if error in most cases. So if there's some kind of error in this, just don't just show blank. And now I have this. I'm going to click on this cell and I'm going to select all these 10 cells. And you can do it with the mouse or the keyboard, however you want. But the key here is that I'm going to go into the formula bar or press F2 to get into the edit mode and then do Control Enter. Okay, Control and Enter at the same time. And now you see that it actually pulled in all the 10 stock values, stock names or symbols from here. So this is amazing. So now we want to pull the history, right? And now this is where we will use the stock history function again. And now the stock will be J2, or that is where the first stock symbol we have. And then I do a comma, which is our start date for pulling the stock history. And remember all the work that we did in the previous step to find the minimum and the maximum dates. That is what we're going to use. So start date, comma, end date. And you again see that the formulas are much more readable because we have named those cells. So I'm just going to do end date and then comma. Do I want daily data? Yes, we're going to build this daily screener. And then do I want any headers? I don't want any headers now. So I'm just going to do no. And then do I want to display date or close? I don't need the date anymore because for every stock, I don't need the date column to be again and again repeating. So I'm just going to do just the closing price. So just one close parenthesis. And like I said before, I like if errors. I'm just going to mark this if error, hit enter. Okay, so now we have, and you can see now that it pulls in. So this is not Microsoft, so I can't compare between this. So let's go back here and put in Tesla. Okay, so Tesla, the starting row for us would be 858.97, and then the ending will be 1145. And you can see 858 to 1145. And there are how many values? 19 values. And that's because this is a trading day, and so we only get 19 from the history, and so everything seems to be correct. So once we know this is correct, we can click on the cell where we wrote the stock history function, and then you select all the 10 cells just like before, edit mode, F2, control enter. That's it. So now we have the stock history for all the 10 stock symbols. Awesome. So now we're done with pulling the stock history. So now it's time to go back to the screener and calculate the simple moving average for every one of the stocks in our screener table. So I'm going to go back here. So let's start typing in what kind of information we need. So first, I just want to bring in the current price or the last price information. So one thing you will notice is that because we have a stock data type in this table, Excel, because it is smart, it is now going to help make things much easier. So for example, I'm just going to type in price and you see what happens. It automatically says you can actually pull the stock price for this specific stock as a column. So you don't even need to write a formula. You can just say, hey, click on price. And now this is, again, awesome benefit of the stock's data type or data types in general is just going to make things easier for us to pull data. So essentially every cell now you see that as we go down, the stock price for that specific stock is being pulled. This is amazing. So now the next part we want to do is to actually calculate the simple moving average. So I'm just going to call it SMA, simple moving average. Now, here is where we're going to do this important formula to find out the average of those 20 values, right? So let's begin with just doing an offset function. The offset function, if you're not familiar with it, it starts from a reference point. Okay, so the outcome of the offset function will be a range of cells or an array. And in this case, we want the 20 cells. Okay, and so we're going to go back to the help sheet and we say, where do I want to have it as a reference? So I'm going to start as a reference here. Okay, just the one column before we started pulling in the stock history for all the cells. And this is my reference, so I'm going to lock it, okay, comma. How many rows do I need to go before I start pulling my array? So for us, if I go one row lower from I2, we will be moving into I3, right? So one row down is where our price history starts, comma. How many columns do I need to move to the right? And so for the first stock symbol Tesla, I want to move one column. For the second, I need to move two columns. So it's a dynamic value. And I told you that there was a reason why I selected this or I calculated this stock number. I'm going to use that here. So we don't need that. If I click on stock number, the beauty of this is that as I go from row to row, it automatically changes the stock number for me, so it becomes dynamic. So I'll show you after we implement this. But now, what is the height of my offset? If I go back here, the height of my offset is 20 because I want to go and capture all the 20 values. Okay. I understand that we only have 19 values now. And even if you go longer than you need, it's okay because the additional values will become just zero, but you don't want to be short. And so I'm going to now just type it in as 20 because we need a 20, maximum 20 cells will be there with the price history. So I'm going to now close parenthesis, and this is an array. So before we pull the array, I'm just going to maybe do a sum. And by that way, it will sum them up. So now let's quickly verify whether our result is accurate. So we have 18,209.95 calculated for us. And now let's go to the help sheet. And then I'm just going to select all the values here and you will see that it is 18,209.95. And let's look at the other one. 7359.05. Let's go back here, 7359.05. So it is correct. And now for the second part of this formula, we will say if the trading day is yes, So if it is a trading day, then we want to add the price from the price column, which is the current latest price. If not, then zero, don't add anything. And just to close the parenthesis, we'll close this whole thing inside open and close parenthesis, the sum and the trading day part, everything. And then finally, we'll divide this by 20 because we want to do an average. So we're going to divide it by 20. And now what is happening here is this part is adding up the previous 19 values, and then this part is adding up the price, the latest. So that's 20 values, and then we divide it by 20. So this is how we are able to now calculate the simple moving average for the last 20 days. Okay, so for the next part, we're going to add a few columns to make it a little bit more useful in terms of what attributes or in terms of what information we have about these stocks. So I'm going to start with just, showing the previous day's price or the previous close price. And you can see that I can just type in previous and it'll automatically pull me the previous close, change. So I can select change. I can also then select change percentage. And now it'll add. And you can see that it automatically doesn't apply the correct format because it applied a dollar format. So I can go back and change it to percentage. If you're interested in doing some conditional formatting, so you can do that as well on these change percentage. So I'll come back to that in the next step. But if you want to add other things like industry, you can just do industry and it'll pull that information for you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this change percentage. So I can do conditional formatting. And I can do any of these, arrows. You can see that they're going up and down, but generally go back to the conditional formatting, hit on manage rules, go back to the rule that was created and edit according to your needs. So for example, if I wanted to say anything which changed by more than 1% of the price, so 0.01. So 0.01 will be 1%, and I will change this to a number. And I will make this as minus 0.01. Anything which is less than minus 1%, which means that it decreased by more than 1%, then I want it to be red arrow going down. So hit OK, apply, OK. So now what you see here is the red, yellow, and then the green arrows pointing according to the change percentage. OK. So then now let's talk a little bit about slicers or the signals. I think the signal is the one I totally forgot about it to add. So I'm going to go and insert. You can do any way of inserting. And I'm going to do an insert and say, what is my signal? So generally speaking, if you'll write an if formula using an if function, if the price is greater than the simple moving average. So if the price is trending higher than the simple moving average, then you would say, oh, it's trending up, so we should buy. So I would say buy, comma, if the price is less than the simple moving average, I would say sell. If not, just stay neutral, close parenthesis, because we had open two if functions, so I will have to close another time, and I hit okay. So now you have a few stocks having buy and a few having sell. So now we have the trading signal as well. Let's do a simple insert, a slicer. So now we have, it asks us for us to choose which columns do you want as slicers. I'm going to choose signal and industry. And again, these are completely up to you depending on, what columns are important to you. You can apply the slicers accordingly. And I'm just going to choose these two for now. So what has happened here is if I only wanted to look at buy signals, I'll just hit buy. If I only wanted to look at sell, I hit sell. If I want both, then I remove my filter or disable or clear the filter. So this is how you can now have a screener which is interactive. Now, what is still missing is we don't have it dynamic. So what do I mean by dynamic? Right now, it is pulling a 20 period or 20-day simple moving average. What if I wanted to do 50? So how do you make this dynamic? At any point, whenever you want to change it, you want to go back from 20 to a 50, or 200. How do you do that? So first thing I would recommend is go back here, and this is the, let's just call this as a, give this cell a name. So PER for period, and right now it is 20. Great. Now, if I go back to our original stock history function that we wrote here, we said go back 35 days, right? And you can actually do this for a lot longer. So I'm just going to do maybe 1,000 days. It's like 2 years or something, like 3 years. So I'll do that. So now it'll actually go back 1,000 days. These things don't need anymore, so we'll skip that part. So now if I have more history at in my first step, and then I can, if I want to change this as 50, okay, and I'll tell you how to do that. So nothing changed, right? Because we haven't connected our formulas to this dynamic named range. So what I'm going to do is to go into the final, start row column calculation. And if you remember, we were doing hard-coded values, like we assumed we were going to do it only for 20, so we named it as 18 and 19. So the reality is not 18 or 19. It should be period -2 or period -1. So now you see what happens. We start, the final row is 691 and the starting row is 643. And now you saw automatically these things work. So how many rows we have? 49 rows of history. And that's because we put 50 days. Let's say I put 100 days. Automatically, we get 99 days of history. So amazing. So all we had to do was to change this start row calculation that we had set up. And now everything else works smoothly. We don't need to change any of those things. And I go back to the screener. There is one formula that we have to change, which is, remember that we hard coded 20 here. Change that 20 to PER, which is the named range for that. Okay, PER. And now it actually is pulling in, did I have 100? Okay, let's just say 50 for now. And if I select all of these values, that's 49 rows of price information, and that's 44,427.56. And then we will add this information, right? So let's just double check here, 44427.56. So I'm just going to type it in. Okay, and then we have 1099.23, right? So if I add these two values, I get 45526.79, and we're going to divide this by 50. What do we get? 910.5358, 910.5358. So it's working absolutely correctly. So just to recap, that to make it dynamic wasn't that hard. All we did was to take this one formula that we had here for start row, we made this dynamic using referring to the PER, and then we changed the hard-coded values in our SMA calculation to be based on PER instead of hard-coded 20. That's it. Only two changes. Now we have made a dynamic stock screener. So I can actually take it back here, put them wherever you want. So I think I have to cut it again, go back here, paste it. So now this is a dynamic stock screener. So you can color them however you want. I'm not going to focus too much on formatting, but what I do want to point out here is the functionality. So I just changed 20. You saw that the simple moving average changed. I can do 100, and then it updates the stock. The trading signal also will update. Okay, so the final part of this screener again is to just have some counts. And again, this is totally up to you. I like to just say count if this is buy. I can select the signal column and I will do is it buy? Okay, I'll tell you why this is not where we will finally end up. I can copy this, paste it, and then change this to sell. Okay, all I'm doing is just a simple countif of the signal column for specific buy or sell text. Okay, this is okay. So we have 10 stocks and 6 of them are in the buy and 4 are in sell. Awesome. But one thing is it doesn't react to the slicers. So when we change the slicers, you see that this doesn't change. If that's what you want, no problem. You can leave it like that because it gives you the total stock counts and not necessarily the filtered. If you do want it to reflect filtered, so there is a little trick. So I like to add a column called filter. And then this filter, I will use a formula to say subtotal function, open. I do 3 for count A, comma, and I will choose any of the things here. So any of the columns in this row. I'll do close parenthesis. Okay. So it shows in dollar symbol. I don't think we need that. So just make it general. That's okay. Now, how do I make this accommodate the slicer activity? And I go back to our countIf function and change it to countifs. And now add another condition to say the filter should be 1. That is it. Okay. So now I'll show you how this works. So if I click on banking services, you saw that there's no buy stock in banking. So I can do it back and now it shows 6. So it's reacting to the slicer. So same thing we can do for sell. I will just change the buy to sell. Okay. Countifs, two conditions. One is the signal based condition. The other one is the filter should be 1. And if I now click on automobiles, you'll see that the buy is 1, sell is 0. If I click on banking, buy is 0, sell is 1. And again, both ways it's reflecting or reacting correctly to our slicers. So now we have it. So that completes our stock screener table creation. Dynamically, you can change the period and also you can use it interactively to identify buy and sell stocks. Now for the final part, I want to just go over a few things about how do you add more stocks to this and extend it further. So let's say, for example, I have another 10 stocks copied from my other sheet, which is on the other screen. And I can come in here, the cell below this table, and then right click, paste as values. And now you saw that it automatically extended the stock. It extended the stock number. It extended all the formulas that we have everywhere in this table. But the information is not accurate. And I'll tell you why. It's because we only pulled 10 stocks, stock history here. And so the screener needs 20 stocks now. So depending on how many stocks you need to first expand this data collection mechanism. So for example, I will go from, okay, let's just go all the way to, I don't know, maybe 50. I'll stop at 50. Okay, so I have 50 and now I will have to expand this next formula in the next row, select all the cells, edit mode, F2, control, enter. And now it pulls all the other information. Do you remember that we were putting in an if error function? And that's because, like, for example, here, we only have 20 stocks in the screener table, but we also have formulas ready to accommodate 50 if we add it. So that's where this if error function comes in and makes all these errors go away, where we don't have the stocks yet. Okay, now for the stock history function, same thing. We want to just extend the formula, select all the cells, F2 or edit mode, control enter. Okay, so now what we have done now is expanded our screener to accommodate 50 stocks. Okay, even though we only have 20, but it can accommodate 50. So let's do our favorite Microsoft. So I'm just going to go XNAS colon MSFT, enter. That's it. So now that's how I can add one more or two more or how many ever more up to 50 the template, the sheet can handle now. And if I go back here, you see that Microsoft in number 21 got automatically pulled in. Awesome. So you can add more. So one thing I've noticed is that I've done, all the way until 500 plus, and it was okay. But if you extend to 1,000 or more, remember that um, if you're pulling a lot of history, it can be a lot of data transfer that it's expected, and the file could become slower. So only put in the stocks that you really are interested in. You can definitely put 100, 200 to 500. I think that should be okay. It refreshes very quickly within a few seconds, no problem. I have been testing with another file where I'm doing multiple moving averages. I'm not only doing a 20 period, I'm doing a 20, 50, 100, like multiple simple moving averages at the same time. And if you're familiar with the stock screener, for example, in TradingView, I'm kind of working on something similar where you can see SMA 20, SMA 50, SMA 200, and it'll give you an overall aggregate rating. Is it a strong buy or a strong sell? And yeah, I mean, it works for 500 stocks at this point, but if I expand more to thousands of stocks, then I think there will be some performance issues at this point. So just keep that in mind. If when you add more stocks, add only the stocks that you really need. Then if you're under 500, I don't think it should be a problem at all. Go ahead and add them. So again, just to recap, you make sure that you expand your stock history pulling mechanism here to more stocks first, and then your screener table will automatically adjust to it. You don't need to do anything. You just need to add stocks to it. Okay, so that is the end. We have come to the end of the tutorial where you can create a stock screener. And I mean, I think this is the one that I was using. Yeah, the formatting looks a little bit different, but otherwise, from a functionality perspective, it is exactly the same as what we have just now built from scratch. If you want to do, instead of a daily moving average, if you want to do based on the weekly data, and that you will have to go back to the help sheet where we originally did the stock history. If you remember, we did the stock history and we said it's a daily thing when the interval was daily, and you would change this to weekly to make it, one, and that means it'll pull weekly data. That's the first change you need to make. And then the other change you need to make is when you come in here and pulled in the stock history, you would change this also to weekly. So those are the two changes that you need to do in order to convert this whole thing into a weekly thing. Now, apart from that, another suggestion or something that you have to watch out for is if you need, for example, if you end up doing monthly, you need to go back a long time in history if you have to capture all that. So let's say, for example, you're trying to do 200 period. So your period is 200, you want to do it monthly. So you need 200 months of data, right? And so you have to make sure that you are able to get that much history available in order for you to do. And again, if only you do that, then you need to come back and change this piece here. We did it for 1,000 days, which is like 3 years or so, but you can't get 200 months within 3 years of data. And so you will run into issues. What I'm trying to say here is that this period that we are looking back in history should always be greater than the period that you're trying to calculate the simple moving average for. If you're doing it for 200 days, then this should be able to accommodate all the 200 days trading days of history. So 1,000 should be good. But if you're doing 200 months, this is not good enough. You need to expand this to a lot more days. And if I remember correctly, I think we do have multiple years of history in the stock history function, but verify that before you are trying to do a very long window, weekly, monthly type of time frames. The other thing I would recommend you to keep an eye on is if you have stocks which are in if you're one of your stocks, let's say for example, has a very short history. If it's a newer stock and it only has the last 15 months or 15 months, and you're trying to do a 20-month simple moving average, be aware that that will cause problems, because if the stock itself doesn't have 20 months of history, then you should not be even calculating a 20-month simple average for that stock. But we haven't really accounted for that in the formulas. We assume that all the stocks will have enough history for what we are trying to do. So pay attention. If you have any newer stocks, then pay attention to the simple moving average window. And we have to accommodate accordingly into our formulas, which I'm planning to do in my advanced version that I'm working on. The other last suggestion or catch that I want you to be aware of is, if you have stocks which are across multiple exchanges or multiple time zones. So if you have some stocks in the US market and some in the Hong Kong or other, markets with a different time zone, just, pay close attention to the dates, because we only I pulled in based on all the US market stocks. And so the time is the same, meaning when we calculated whether it's a trading day or not, I'm just saying, is the date the same? And I assumed that this is true for all the stocks I'm looking at. So please note that we built this based on Microsoft. We can do it based on Tesla because they both are in the NASDAQ stock exchange, and the date time will be the same. But if our stock watch list includes from different time zones, then ideally you want to calculate the trading day flag for each of the stocks separately. Right now, we only did the trading day flag directly or in one place centrally. And that's because I'm assuming that all the stocks that I'm interested in are going to be traded in the same time zone. If that's your case, then no problem, don't worry. But if you have a very complex list of stocks, then you will have to build that trading day flag as a column in this table and then modify the formulas accordingly. If that's interesting, or if any of the other things that we talked about as suggestions or recommendations, if you want me to do another video about it, please post them in the comments. It's been a while since I did any kind of a long tutorial step by step. So I hope this went well. And if this is something, or these type of videos are helpful, definitely let me know, and I will look forward to doing more of these. Thank you very much again. And I will put the link to the whenever I finish building the advanced version, and I will be putting a link in the description. So please check them out, and I look forward to your feedback. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon in another video.